Michael Jordan wasn't all that good of a defender. Facts or cap?
That's a fact.
Oh, Lord.
That's a fucking fact.
And what leads you to believe this?
Crazy.
I just feel like his dominance on the offensive end just took over anything he did on the court. If it came to defense, like guys like you said, Kenyon Martin, Rasheed Wallace, and all these guys who really are defensive players, I'm gonna take advice from them before I take advice from Mike when it comes to the defensive end. But that doesn't mean he didn't play defense or anything like that. I just feel like, the first person I'm going to about defense is probably like Gary Payton or, guys like that. So I don't consider him like this great defensive player to me. I just think overall he's just dominant.
When we're thinking about Michael Jordan, when there's a key stop to be made, he's making it, right? Snapping back on, Karl Malone, right, to get that steal, to go win the game, right? Making the block, right? He was the actual net guy.
Okay.
As an individual guard, Pippen was a better defender on the ball.
Right.
Right? He was a better defender on the ball. Michael Jordan awareness of defense was great. A Michael Jordan wouldn't guard, right? He wouldn't guard a Kawhi Leonard, or he wouldn't guard, let's say, LeBron James if there's a Vando on the court, right? You're gonna put him on Vando, and he's
so
just
good at that.
Then he's gonna say, all right, Vando only takes 2 shots a game. I'm gonna roam. Now you have Michael Jordan roaming during the game, right? That's not what you wanted, right? So he's the one sitting there netting, coming back, snapping back, because his guy's only shooting 2 shots a game. So when he had guys like that, so why you think he makes think about when he made his first all-defensive team. It's the year Scottie Pippen comes to the game.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, he wasn't considered a defensive player until Scottie Pippen comes, because now him and Scottie Pippen can do exactly when he's on the ball, Scottie Pippen, you follow me. Scottie Pippen, when you have the ball, I'm netting everything up, right? So they had a great system. So he's no different than like a Drew Holiday, where I'm the net guy. I'm making sure this guy don't come. What's the name? Patrick Ewing likes to go this way. I'm gonna come this way. But if you try to take him off the dribble man to man, right? That's where his exposure was when you had high-level guys. Remember, in the 80s, you didn't have 3 and D guys. You didn't have the three-level guys where he has to guard you shooting a 3. Like, for the most part, like let's say John Starks, right? John Starks didn't dribble like that. So when John Starks pump fake, he didn't take them off the either. Where's John Starks going, right? Like, think about what moves did they have in the 80s?
There are words that, once spoken, echo like a dagger through history. When Brandon Jennings, on Gil's Arena, declared, "Michael Jordan wasn't all that good of a defender," that wasn't just an opinion. It was a strike at the very heart of basketball's collective memory, a memory of a defensive storm named Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Here lies the paradox. A player who made the all-defensive first team 9 times, who won Defensive Player of the Year, an honor neither Kobe Bryant nor LeBron James ever achieved, is somehow reduced to being labeled a scorer only. People forget that before he became the ultimate scoring king, Jordan was a terror at both ends of the floor. Flashback to 1988. That season, Michael Jordan didn't just average 35 points per game to claim MVP honors, he also took home the Defensive Player of the Year award. He joined the rarest of company, standing alone as the man who simultaneously ruled offense and defense. How many legends can say, "I was the MVP on both ends of the court"? Almost none. And Jordan stands unrivaled. But it isn't only about accolades. It's about the fear he injected into opponents. Ask Clyde Drexler, Dominique Wilkins, or even Karl Malone, beasts of the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds. They don't just remember Jordan for his dunks and fadeaways. They remember his hands slicing through passing lanes, his blocks erasing shots, his suffocating presence that strangled the rhythm of entire games. To say Jordan wasn't a good defender is like claiming Muhammad Ali couldn't defend himself, or that Diego Maradona couldn't pass the ball. It is a shameless denial of a dimension that forged the most complete legend basketball has ever seen. And that is why the record must be set straight today. Michael Jordan was never just a scoring artist. He was a wrecking machine, a man who could crush the very soul of any opponent, at any moment, on either end of the floor. Jordan's defensive legacy written in stone. Numbers don't lie, but in Jordan's case, they barely scratch the surface of his defensive greatness. Let's start with the cold, hard facts. 9-time All, Defensive First Team and 1,988 Defensive Player of the Year. Only a handful of guards in NBA history have ever touched the DPOY trophy, and Jordan stands at the very top of that mountain. Guards aren't supposed to win at centers, and forwards dominate that award. Yet in 1988, Jordan broke the rules of history. That season, he averaged 3.2 steals and 1.6 blocks per game, numbers that would be career years for most defenders. But for Jordan, they were just another line in his arsenal. Think about that. A 6'6" shooting guard posting defensive stats that rivaled big men. Add that to his 35 points per game and league MVP, and you get something unprecedented. A player who was both the league's most feared scorer and its most feared defender in the same year, and it didn't stop in 1988. Year after year, Jordan's presence on the all-defensive first team validated what every opponent already knew. You couldn't relax against him, not for a single possession. His hands were like traps, his anticipation like a sixth sense. He wasn't just reacting, he was dictating. Passing lanes that were open against anyone else were suddenly closed when Jordan was on the floor. Now, critics like to argue, Scottie Pippen was the Bulls' best on-ball defender. Fine, Pippen was a defensive genius. But to use that as a knock against Jordan is to misunderstand basketball itself. Defense isn't just about who shadows the ball handler. It's about who breaks, plays a part, who kills momentum, who decides when the dagger stop must be made. Pippen and Jordan weren't in competition, they were a two-headed dragon. And the head that struck when the game was on the line? More often than not, it was Jordan. Remember the 1997 Eastern Conference Finals? Jordan shadowed Tim Hardaway, one of the quickest guards in the league, and stripped him when it mattered. Recall the 1991 Finals. Jordan took the challenge of guarding Magic Johnson himself, neutralizing the 6'9" maestro long enough for the Bulls to seize control of the series. Or go back to 1989, Jordan didn't just score the shot over Craig Alo. He also recorded crucial defensive stops earlier in that game that gave the Bulls the chance to even reach that final possession. These weren't accidents. They were a pattern, a trademark, a signature. And this is what separates Jordan from great scorers of history. Plenty of players can put up points. Very few can guard the best on the other end and still drop 35 on you. Fewer still can sustain that standard for over a decade. Jordan didn't just play both ends. He dominated both ends, defining defensive moments, the stops that made Jordan immortal. Some players build their legacy on highlights that go viral: poster dunks, game winners, flashy crossovers. But Michael Jordan's legend is also written in the silent daggers, those defensive moments where the air left the building because everyone knew Jordan had just ended the game without scoring a point. The most famous? Game 6, 1998 NBA Finals. With 18 seconds left, Utah led by 3. The ball went to Karl Malone in the post, a two-time MVP, the mailman who always delivered. But not this time. Jordan slid behind him like a shadow, stripped the ball clean, and sprinted down the court. What followed was the last shot. The steal came first. The defense created the immortality. Without that defensive play, there is no iconic shot, no sixth championship, no perfect ending. Go back further, 1991 NBA Finals. Magic Johnson was the architect of Showtime, a 6'9" point guard unlike anything the league had seen. For one game, Jordan said, "He's mine." And he didn't just survive, he forced Magic to pass, disrupted his rhythm, and tilted the series. The Bulls went from doubters to champions in that moment. Offense didn't win that crown alone, defense did. Or take the 1988 season, Jordan's DPOY year. In March of that year, against the Detroit Pistons, those bad boys who prided themselves on toughness, Jordan recorded 8 steals in one game, slicing into passing lanes like a predator. He wasn't just scoring, he was dismantling the most feared team in basketball with anticipation and relentlessness. And don't forget his battles with Patrick Ewing and the Knicks. Madison Square Garden was a war zone, every possession a fight. Jordan guarded Ewing on weak side help, swatted shots from behind, and shut down John Starks on the perimeter. He wasn't content to just drop 40 on New York. He made sure they suffocated when they tried to score back. Even the Iverson crossover moment, the one critics love to bring up, proves the point. Yes, Allen Iverson shook Jordan once, maybe the most replayed crossover in history, but do you know the final score of that game? Bulls won. Jordan walked off the floor victorious, because one highlight does not erase a career of stops, steals, and clutch defense. Jordan didn't need to be perfect every possession. He needed to be perfect when it mattered, and he was. This is the essence of Jordan's defensive greatness, selective devastation. He didn't chase every block or press every dribble. He waited. He read. He struck like a viper, and when he did, the outcome of games, seasons, and even legacies changed in an instant. That's why Jordan's defense wasn't just good. It was defining. It was the silent half of his dominance, the half that ensured his greatness wasn't just seen in box scores, but felt in the pit of every opponent's stomach. Jordan versus Kobe versus LeBron. The defensive divide. When people debate the GOAT, they love to talk scoring and rings. But let's shift the lens to defense, because that's where the separation gets uncomfortable. Start with Kobe Bryant. Kobe was a relentless defender, no question. He earned 12 all-defensive team selections, a badge of honor for his Mamba mentality. But look closer. Many of those nods came during years when Kobe's offensive workload was superhuman. His reputation carried him, sometimes more than his actual impact. Even Phil Jackson admitted that as Kobe aged, he often conserved energy on defense, saving his fuel for 40-point nights. Did Kobe lock in during key possessions? Absolutely. But was he asked to be the kind of two-way destroyer Jordan was in 1988? Never. Kobe modeled his defensive posture, his footwork, even his hand activity after Jordan. The blueprint came first from MJ. Kobe was the student, and even he would admit Jordan was the master. Now consider LeBron James. In his prime, LeBron was a terrifying defender. His size, speed, and chase-down blocks created viral moments that will live forever. That block on Andre Iguodala in the 2016 finals? Legendary. But here's the reality. LeBron has never been named Defensive Player of the Year. He's never balanced being the league's best scorer and its best defender in the same season. He's made 6 all-defensive teams, less than half of Jordan's 9. And like Kobe, LeBron often managed his energy because carrying the offensive load for 20 years demanded it. That doesn't diminish his brilliance, but it shows the trade-offs he made. Michael Jordan didn't make trade-offs. In 1988, he didn't say, "I'll pick one side of the ball." He said, "I'll dominate both." 35 points per game. League MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 9 all-defensive, first teams across his career. Jordan didn't just choose to show up defensively when the lights were brightest, he made it his standard. Every season, every game. And let's not forget mentality. Kobe intimidated with obsession. LeBron overwhelms with physical gifts. But Jordan? He terrified with inevitability. Opponents didn't just fear his scoring, they feared his ability to snatch away the ball, the lead, the game, and your soul, all in one motion. So yes, Kobe and LeBron are defensive greats in their own right. But Jordan's defense was not a supplement to his offense. It was fused into his DNA. He was the only one who could say, "I am the best scorer alive, and I will also take your best player and break him." That's why when the debate shifts to defense, Jordan's shadow only grows larger. Kobe chased it. LeBron flashes it. But Jordan lived it night after night, season after season, until there was no doubt left. Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman. The defensive trinity, no one denies it. The Chicago Bulls dynasty was built on defense. And yes, Jordan had teammates who were defensive icons in their own right. Scottie Pippen, perhaps the greatest perimeter defender of the 1,990 seconds, and Dennis Rodman, the rebounding savant and psychological disruptor. Critics love to point at these names as if to say, "See, Jordan wasn't really the defensive force. He had help." Of course, he had help. That's what championship teams are. But here's the difference. Even alongside 2 defensive juggernauts, Jordan's presence was the catalyst, the anchor, the heartbeat. Take Scottie Pippen. Long, agile, a master of on-ball defense. Pippen could suffocate point guards and small forwards alike, from Magic Johnson to Clyde Drexler. But ask yourself this: when the Bulls needed the game-winning stop, who was always next to Pippen in the trenches? Who was the one anticipating the weak side pass, stripping the ball in crunch time, or making the sneaky backside block? Jordan. Pippen played the front line. Jordan sealed the trap. They weren't separate, they were a lock and key. And more often than not, it was Jordan turning the key at the moment of truth. Now consider Dennis Rodman. The Worm was an unparalleled rebounder and irritant. He could deny Karl Malone position or outwork Charles Barkley on the boards. But Rodman was never the closer. His job was to wear opponents down, to frustrate them, to battle possession by possession. Jordan's job was different. End it. You can see it in the '96 finals against Seattle, or the battles with Utah. Rodman and Pippen might set the table, but when the final possession came, Jordan was the one who read the floor like an open book and stole the meal. This is what the critics miss. Yes, Jordan played with elite defenders, but instead of diminishing his defensive legacy, it amplified it. Think of it like this: place even the greatest defenders alongside you, and if you still shine, it means you are undeniable. The fact that Jordan collected 9 all-defensive first-team honors while sharing the floor with Pippen, and later Rodman, proves the point. Coaches and peers still saw him as the ultimate defensive force, not just a beneficiary of others. And then there's the psychological edge. Opponents didn't just see Jordan as a scorer, they knew he could take away their confidence on defense, too. Imagine trying to bring the ball up the floor, knowing Pippen is in your face and Jordan is lurking behind him, ready to pounce. That's not just defense, that's terror. In the end, Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman formed the greatest defensive trinity the NBA has ever seen. But don't confuse partnership with dependency. Jordan wasn't carried, he was the closer, the dagger, the final shadow in the dark. Even surrounded by legends, his defensive greatness never dimmed. If anything, it burned brighter, beyond specialists. Why Jordan's defense was different. Basketball history is full of men who built their names on defense alone. Gary Payton, the Glove, is remembered as the only point guard ever to win Defensive Player of the Year. Kawhi Leonard, the Claw, was a 2-time DPOY, a handsy shadow who strangled passing lanes and forced superstars into silence. Dennis Rodman, of course, lived for rebounds, deflections, and bruises. These are names carved into the granite of defense. But here's the critical difference. Defense was their specialty. For Payton, Leonard, and Rodman, stopping the other team's best scorer was the essence of their value. Their offense? Good, sometimes even great, but never the defining element of their careers. They were specialists. Michael Jordan was not a specialist. He was a total package. He didn't just guard the best players, he was the best player on both sides of the ball. Imagine dropping 35 points on one end, then stripping your opponent on the other to win the game. That was Jordan's reality. He didn't clock in as defender or scorer. He clocked in as destroyer. Let's line it up. Gary Payton had 1 DPOY and 9 all-defensive first teams. Jordan? Same number of all-defense selections, plus a scoring title in nearly every season of his prime. Payton's offense was solid. Jordan's was historic. Kawhi Leonard has 2 DPOYs and multiple all-defensive nods. But Kawhi has never combined those accolades with being the unquestioned best scorer in the league. Jordan did it in the same year, 1988 League MVP, scoring champ, Defensive Player of the Year, a one-man apocalypse. Rodman grabbed boards like a madman and out-hustled anyone alive. But he couldn't close games offensively. Jordan did both, closing games with a steal and then a dagger jumper seconds later. This is what separates Jordan. Specialists shine in their lane, but Jordan owned the whole highway. He was the first and only guard in NBA history to dominate as both an unstoppable scorer and a lockdown defender at the same time. And let's be honest, if Jordan had wanted to, he could have made defense his full identity, just like Payton or Kawhi. He had the instincts, the footwork, the vertical, the hands, but instead, he used defense as his weapon of choice, not his only weapon. He didn't have to stop you every possession, he just needed to stop you when it hurt most. That's what makes his defense so terrifying. Specialists limit stars. Jordan ended them. And that's why Michael Jordan's defense isn't just great for a scorer. It's all-time great, period. He belongs in the same breath as Payton, Leonard, and Rodman, except with one crucial twist. While they guarded greatness, Jordan was greatness, doing both jobs at once. The truth about Jordan's defense: Critics love to bring up the Allen Iverson crossover. One moment in 1997, a rookie crossed up the greatest of all time, and it became immortalized in highlight reels. But that's the trick of narrative. A single clip doesn't erase a career. Did Iverson shake Jordan? Yes. Did the Bulls win the game? Also yes. And in the years before and after, Jordan piled up 9 all-defensive first-team selections, a Defensive Player of the Year award, countless game-sealing steals, and the fear of every superstar he faced. Iverson's crossover was a highlight. Jordan's defense was a legacy. And that legacy came not from chasing every possession like a madman, but from what can only be called selective devastation. Jordan understood that great defense isn't about playing 48 minutes of perfect denial, it's about knowing when to strike. Like a predator, stalking prey, he waited, anticipated, and then pounced. A deflection here, a strip there, a block in the final 2 minutes, a steal in the finals. He didn't need to smother you for 4 quarters. He needed to break you in the 4th. That's why, when you measure defense in its truest form, not just stats, but impact, Jordan's case grows undeniable. He wasn't a specialist like Gary Payton or Kawhi Leonard. He wasn't a role player like Dennis Rodman. He was the alpha predator who could lead the league in scoring while erasing your best player at the other end. He didn't need to choose between offense and defense. He did both. And he did both better than anyone else. So let's end the myth once and for all. Michael Jordan was not just an offensive juggernaut. He was a two-way titan, a man who could drop 40 points and then rip your heart out with a single defensive play. The steal against Malone in 1998. The shutdown of Magic in 1991. The countless times he turned defense into offense, momentum into history, doubt into dominance. This is why when you put Jordan beside Kobe, LeBron, Payton, Kawhi, or Rodman, the conversation shifts. They all had pieces of greatness. Jordan had all of it. He was the ultimate closer, the one-man system, the embodiment of perfection on both ends of the floor. And so, to those who still claim Jordan wasn't that good of a defender, the evidence is overwhelming. The verdict is final. Michael Jordan was not only the greatest scorer the game has ever known, he was also one of its greatest defenders, a man who turned defense into destiny. The GOAT debate can rage on. But when it comes to defense, the truth is sealed in history. Michael Jeffrey Jordan was the standard. The nightmare. The lockdown. The end.